I like to say I'm not the woman my mom wanted me to be. I'm very much gender nonconforming because I'm not the lady that society wants or expects of me. So I do love these, new nuances that we have in the non-binary thinking.
Hello, I am Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories that they created there, and the people that they used to know. Cast your mind back to the year 1999. Which, to be honest, shouldn't be that difficult because I'm pretty sure it was only like 6 or 7 years ago. Let me help set the scene. We are all worried sick about this thing that we keep hearing about called the Y2K bug. There is this new cartoon on TV called Spongebob Squarepants, and the folk punk queer duo Bitch and Animal have just released their debut album, What's That Smell? And one of the songs on the album, Drag King Bar, happens to document the band's misadventures at a night called Club Casanova, which was held at Velvet in New York City. I was lucky enough to nab some time with Bitch, who is one half of Bitch and Animal, if you didn't get that already, who is currently in the midst of touring her latest record, Bitchcraft. This was a really fun little chat, and although I can't promise you we stayed on topic the entire time, I mean, you've listened to this show before, right? Like, you know what you're getting yourself in for. I did manage to find out about the makeout session with the drag king Murray Hill that inspired the Drag King Bar song, and I think you're going to really enjoy the story. Shall we get into it?
First, let me say that it does not surprise me that people don't know about drag kings. And, we know a lot about drag queens. And, I do think that's related to our misogynist culture and lesbian invisibility. My experience was the drag king scene at that time was booming. And yes, as far as like the legacy of drag kings, it's interesting because when you're in your 20s, you think you invented everything.
I did. What are you talking about? I did.
Right. We made up the entire gay culture, right?
Yeah, you and me together.
There was nothing before us. So, of course, I had met some of my elders. These were all people that I would see around. Older butches, etc. So, it felt like we were part of a legacy. But then, making it into this kind of like campy performance, a queer event happening around it. The drag king scene at that time, I feel like, and maybe it was just my own delusion, but felt like it was very much a thing.
Well, okay, so let's take a quick step back and talk about why you were in New York. Was it to make it?
Yep. Animal is from New York, and we had met in Chicago. We were both studying acting at DePaul in Chicago. As soon as we met, we had just this instant psychic connection and started playing music together. And finally, over the course of a couple years, started playing at, art events, art openings, whatever. And then once I graduated from acting school, we kind of started Bitch and Animal as a way to make our own theater. So we always thought of Bitch and Animal as like a performance art project. Mm-hmm. As actors, we felt like this was like feminist theater we were making. And we were doing it with instruments. So at some point, it was actually way later that we even ever referred to ourselves as musicians. So we started making this feminist theater. We named ourselves Bitch and Animal. And we played one show in somewhere outside of Detroit. And we played that show and we could tell we were onto something. And we literally moved to New York like 2 weeks later.
Wow. Well, so how do you know you're onto something?
Based on how people responded, based on, audience feedback. We were actors, and when people are avoiding your eye contact after a show if it sucks.
Yes, yes.
And this one was definitely not like that. People were very excited, and it just felt instant and like instantly affirmed.
And so this sounds kind of delicious. So you just packed up and went there within 2 weeks.
Yes, and just got shitty jobs and found an apartment, etc.
Together.
Yes, we were lovers.
But so you were working together and living together.
Yes,
Wow.
deeply les.
Good. Lean in.
All in.
And so what do you remember from those first days? Like, did you retain the excitement, I guess is what I'm asking? Because being an artist, doing anything is a grind, right? And
yes.
Coming to New York and having that whole like, I'm going to make it in New York and it's going to be this amazing thing. And then 3 months in being like,
what have I done? Yes. It's funny. I never had that come down. What have we done? I think I'm an Aries and I just have so much youthful optimism and energy for things.
Disgusting.
The bitterness wouldn't set in for another 15 years.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it's there now. That's good.
Yeah. But I do remember Animal worked at an ice cream shop and I worked at a coffee shop. So my hours, I had to be there at like 6 a.m. And then we were going out every night, because here we are discovering, just a whole queer scene and making friends and, instantly threw ourselves into the queer scene there. So I seem to remember, we lived so deep in Brooklyn that I would sometimes bring my violin to my job and then find somewhere just in the East Village to just practice in the days to then go out that night. It was mayhem. When I think back on it now, I'm like, what? And then we would go sleep at a friend's house because our Brooklyn apartment was so far away. We were just like scrapping around.
Did you ever do the thing where you stay up all night and then go to work?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How do you manage that? I did it as well, so I don't know why I'm acting like it's, I'm so innocent. I'm such a mystery, but like...
Oh, yeah.
How did we do that?
How did we? Even now, I'm like, oh, my God. We used to go out. And, we wouldn't even go out, like leave the house sometimes till midnight, to go out clubbing, now I'm just like, what? Like, what was I doing? Where did I find the energy?
Yeah.
Insanity.
But makes total sense to your brain then, right?
Oh, yeah. The early 20s partier in me was, it was so logical.
Yeah. And so, what was that like in the first few months? Like, did you get traction as an act quite quickly, or was it like partying and figuring your way out?
A little of both of those. It did feel like we got traction pretty quickly. I seem to remember playing at the WOW Cafe, which is a women's theater space, which I believe is still
acronym
there.
For women on women?
Women.
Oh, wait, no.
Maybe actually. And that was like our first official gig in New York, and we were very excited about it. And just, as soon as we started, things like playing at the Drag King Bar and, just doing those kind of like downtown events, it all felt like we had a momentum very quickly. And then actually I invited this person from my high school to live with us in our Brooklyn apartment because she wanted to move to New York. For some reason, it's as if I was like Rockefeller. I was like, don't worry about rent, whatever, just come live with us. Come invade our living room.
For anyone listening, I am clutching my pearls at the moment. I'm in shock.
Yes. And it proceeded to turn into like this nightmare roommate situation where she was like mad at us about our cat, making us lock our cat in our bedroom because she was allergic and like all of this stuff. And we heard about this town on the end of Cape Cod, Provincetown, where everyone was gay, supposedly. And I'd say we had been in New York maybe a year and a half. And We left this roommate who had not paid $1 in rent.
How long had she been there?
I would say at this point, maybe 6 to 8
Oh,
months.
shit. Okay, so
So we left her with the recliner, with the futon, with the TV, with the lease, everything. And we packed our cat into a U-Haul and we went up to P-Town. And that actually becomes, I think, also another great space story because we started playing a free show in P-Town all summer. And that is what kind of led to our big break.
So I want to hear about the big break, but I also just want to focus on this drama with the flatmates. And let's just wring all the drama out of that, right? So did you tell her you were leaving or did you do like a midnight flirt?
You know what? I can't remember. We must have told her. We must have told her because she took over the lease. So we must have, somehow made it okay with the landlord.
Unless you waited until she was asleep and got her hand and made her forge her signature.
Yes.
Like, have you seen her since then?
No, we never spoke again.
Do you want to say anything in case she's listening?
No. You know what? She's a brilliant artist. And I always believed in her art. I really did. I don't know why I was suddenly like a patron. All of a sudden at 22, working at a cafe, I'm suddenly a patron of the arts, working my minimum wage job. But I believed in her art so much and I wanted to help her get to New York.
And had Animal met her or was it just like, oh, by the way, this is happening? Oh, jeez.
Maybe they had met at some point in Detroit. Maybe. We were wild.
Yeah, but I don't know. Living with people is just never a good idea. Have you met people before? I mean, come on.
I know. Apparently I hadn't at this point. Apparently I hadn't. I was just all in.
Okay. So you ran away from her, took your cat, which is very important, so thank you for doing that.
Comet.
And showed up in Provincetown. What was that like in the 90s? Like, and also, if anyone doesn't know, Provincetown is predominantly gay male, right? I'm looking to you.
Didn't used to be as much.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's more recently. I've been going back there in the last, 5 years because I think of it as one of my soul homes.
Uh-huh.
And it's way more male dominated than it used to be.
Ah, that's interesting. Okay, so in the 90s,
Yeah.
there were more women around.
Yeah, I'd say, I feel like it was probably a little more male, but there were a lot of dykes there.
And so where did you explore when you got
Oh,
there?
so we tried to get a gig at the lesbian club,
Uh-huh.
and she was like, this has been booked for months, and, is telling us who's booked there. And we're like, we don't care, We just thought we were going to rock up with our instruments and just land a gig, And it actually turned out kind of perfectly because we went to a few of the like official venue clubs and they kind of laughed us out of the room. And then somebody said, go find Jingles. So he's the guy who owns the pizza shop Spiritus and then also owns this restaurant across the street from it called Boobala's. And Jingles, he's still a pal. Love this guy. The token straight dude, business owner in P-Town. And we rock up to him. I mean, I'm sure you can only imagine the image, of a young bitch and animal coming up there all entitled and just like, yeah, we're, looking for a gig. And he was the first person who was like, well, let me hear what you do. Nobody else had asked to hear a song. They were just like, who are you, Rugrats? Like, get out of here.
Wait, hang on. I'm sorry. So this is a dumb question.
Oh, go ahead. I love those.
So you didn't give them your demo. Did you just show up with your
Oh,
instruments?
no, we had no demo. Yep. Just showed up with our instruments and our amazing fashion.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I would
Me
have
and my
told you to piss
silver
off.
platform boots. Yeah. We're here. We're amazing. We just played the Wow Theater in New York. Yeah, just clueless.
But he was like, okay, play for me. And then you just unzipped
he
your
was
case.
like, well, let me hear a couple songs. Yeah.
Wow.
So we played him a couple songs and he was like, it's pretty good. How about every Sunday night we'll do a free show? And it actually worked out perfectly because the culture in Provincetown, they're all ticketed shows, which means a lot of the artists, which this is the most humiliating thing, and everybody who plays P-Town complains about it, but they have to bark for their own shows. because they're selling tickets and it's a very touristy town. So, you know, you're not relying on press or
Yeah.
things like that as much because it's just a new influx of people every week. So there's always people standing on the streets passing out flyers for their own shows, which is for any artist completely
Humiliating.
humiliating.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he offered us a free show. So we were like, yes. He's like, I'll pay you
And he
250
paid
from the
you?
bar or whatever.
What?
I
The
know.
90s were
I
wild.
know.
Wow.
I know. And it was going to be a free show open to anyone. So we were like, great. And so we did it every Sunday. And the word just like very quickly caught on. There's this free show, you know, you don't have to get to, you know, the whole thing. It worked so well because of so many factors. But so we started playing this free show and it very quickly became like, it became a happening.
Ah.
It was amazing. All of a sudden, us being laughed out of those fancy clubs was just like the perfect thing.
And so, like, when you say it's like a happening and the fact that it was also like a holiday town, did you have regulars or was it just this kind of new people every time?
We would have regulars because I think what happened is the word got around with the locals. So, you know, they would bring their friends who were coming to visit. We had this group of like biker guys who used to show up every Sunday, you know, every time for it. I mean, we couldn't believe it, you know? So it was a lot of locals as well.
And then you had a special guest. Sorry, I'm preempting what you're going to say next.
Oh,
This is
our big break.
your big break. Yeah, why don't you tell me about it?
Okay, so all right, let me just paint the scene is that this is not even a music venue. It was a restaurant. So every Sunday, we convinced our friend Sarah, she would bring in a whole sound system for us, set it up. You know, we would push tables out of the way of the corner. We had no lighting or anything. And it was all very like improv, you know, Animal and I were always, you know, kind of writing songs live and it was very interactive with the audience, etc. So there's the scene painted, you know, and we would pass a tip jar.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, one night Julie Wolfe came, or no, Kate Wolfe, Julie Wolfe's twin sister, who's a great musician as well, brought her friend Heidi, who was Ani's merchandise person. So somebody told us after the show that Heidi was there, and we had by then made a tape. So we had 5 songs on a tape that I believe we had recorded that summer. I don't know where or when we made this tape, but I'm pretty sure I remember drawing the cover of it in P-Town. So we had made a tape at some point. And so I gave it to Heidi and said, you know, Ani's one of my complete idols. Like, I would love it if you gave this to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. And we got a call like 3 weeks later.
What was that like?
I almost jumped out of my pants skirt.
Your pant skirt? Pant skirt.
In those days, I only wore skirt.
But so what was the call?
It was probably an email. You know, P-Town in general was such a launch pad for us too, because we kind of created this scene there. Then we started getting like booked in places that weren't local.
And that were like actual music venues.
Right. Or like there was some like queer conference going on in Pittsburgh and they had seen us in P-Town. Because it was a tourist attraction, like people from all over were seeing us. Mm-hmm. So me as the, you know, all energy Aries started booking us a tour for that upcoming fall based on, oh, we got a, you know, show in Pittsburgh and a show in North Carolina. Like, let's make it a tour. Mm-hmm. So I was starting to work on that. And yeah, I believe we got an email, not from Ani, from her people, just saying like, Ani heard your tape. She loves it. Do you want to open for her next spring in Amherst, Mass? And we were like, yeah, I mean, just freaking out, excited. And that's what I rerouted the entire tour that I was already booking. We like finished out the tour, did like an East Coast thing. And then Kate Wolfe, Julie's sister, had agreed to produce a record for us because we're like, we can't play a show with Ani without an album. So we spent the whole winter out in Seattle, you know, just quickly drove from Florida to Seattle and made an album that we had in time for that first Ani show in Amherst.
Wow.
And then we played that, and then she started offering us, you know, we started touring with her for the next 4 years. And we made an album with her, and yeah, that really like changed my life as an artist. and gave us a real career.
All thanks to a little pizza place in Provincetown.
I know. Jingles, the original believer.
But wait, does that pizza place still exist? Have we just completely...
Yep.
Oh, damn.
Spiritus.
That's completely against the spirit of this... Oh,
The
spirit.
rule, I know. I'm so sorry. It's not lost.
Okay, well, let's go then back to a lost place. Oh, no, wait, hang on.
Okay.
Is Velvet lost?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, not great. It's terrible.
No, I know, but yeah.
But for the purpose of
Sure,
this conversation.
Yes. And the drag king bar, it was called Club Casanova.
And so we didn't get to talk about your canoodling with Murray.
What do you want to know?
Just, what happened? Who hit on who? What are your tips for flirting? All the usual.
I don't know. I've always been the person who is the lets it be known that I have a crush on you.
And how do you do that? Is it a little wave, a little wink? Do you rub yourself up against them without permission?
Oh, yes. I highly advocate for that. Back in those days, it was probably something very direct. Like, hey, do you want to go in the bathroom and make out? I've never been one to beat around the bush, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I could make a joke about bushes, but I won't.
You could.
So do you remember, or are you just saying, like, this is probably what happened?
Yeah, that's probably what happened. I can picture us in the bathroom, yes, making out. And that was all it was.
And then you were like, I have to go because I've got an idea for a song.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so, like, when that song came out, like when the album came out with that song on it, do you remember the response from people when you were singing about a drag king bar?
Yes. That was one of kind of, our early hits. That was one of the popular ones. And yeah, people loved that song. They loved dancing to it. I think people outside the community were just like, whoa, there is such a thing, I think it was fun for people to feel like, oh, that's part of our culture that's being made slightly visible. Yeah, I definitely remember a response to that song.
Did anyone respond to the use of the word fag within the song? And I say this, and I'm not like saying this because I have a problem with this word. I think anyone listening to the song can tell that it's tongue in cheek.
Right.
But I'm really interested in the evolution of language and how
Me too.
people can struggle with certain terms that are used as slurs.
Yes. At the time, I actually can't remember. I remember it being brought up to me. I feel like I was just so reckless in my youth in that way of like, that's just how we talked. Mm-hmm. My gay boyfriends, we used that word. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really until years later that I start to think like, wow, was I hurting somebody? It was never my intention. My intention was to, I was just being so authentically me, and that's how we talked. Mm-hmm. Definitely there's, quite a bit of my stuff that I look back on and I'm like, ooh, in today's climate, or if I redid that song, I would probably change it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Understanding that people outside of that immediate culture right then and there, we're going to hear that in a different way, or potentially would.
It becomes... And this isn't me saying like that's not an appropriate response, but it becomes a bit like you're policing your own thoughts. I don't know.
What, the idea of saying like I would change it if I put it out now?
No, I think like trying to future-proof everything you write by thinking about like how it could be interpreted in 50 years.
Oh, yeah. And I was not living for the future in those years. I mean, I think a lot of us could relate that when you're that kind of age, you're not thinking about 20 years from now. I wasn't thinking about, even making an album. I wasn't even thinking like, well, what is this going to sound like? This is the permanent, version of this song. Yes, we were just throwing things around. And so, yes, there isn't that policing. And, I think just as we get older, we start to just be more conscious, I think, or more uptight.
Yeah. There's been an interesting thing this week where Lizzo's released a song that has a
Yes.
particular lyric on it that should never have been on that song ever. And I find it a bit hard to understand because it's a major label release and it's been listened to by so many people before it got released. But after it got released, then people were like, it's not appropriate that you use that word. And her response immediately was like, okay, well, I'm going to re record it and I'm going to change that lyric. I'm sorry. And I don't know how I feel about it.
Why? About her changing
Yeah,
it?
I think the lyric should never have been that in the first place. I think that they've intentionally left it in because I can't understand how anyone would not have, like, how no one would have noticed.
Alerted
Yeah,
her
how
to
no
that.
one would have noticed. And then this kind of court of public opinion has meant that she's just like done this 180. But yeah, it's complicated because I don't think she should have used the word in the first place. But I feel a bit funny about it.
You mean somebody should have stopped her, or she should have never had that thought?
Well, like you'll have a better perspective on this than I do, because in this country, that word is definitely a slur, and there's no way that anyone would use it without knowing that it was a slur. But potentially in the US, that's not the case, and so she may not have been aware.
I actually believe that.
Okay.
That she wouldn't have, and perhaps all the clueless people. I agree. There's so many people that would have gone through
Yeah.
that it's hard to imagine somebody wouldn't have caught that. But I can absolutely see how it didn't get caught.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Somebody actually called me out on something recently that I didn't realize. I wrote a little bit of a play to weave together the tale of Bitchcraft. And so I've been doing it and like telling a whole like autobiographical story. And I go through being a very young child with my mom teaching tap dancing classes in our basement. And then, I go through growing up and then meeting Animal and writing the Pussy Manifesto. And I say something about like, the way we use the word pussy to mean something weak or lame. And I had never understood the word lame being an ableist slur.
Okay.
And, my friend pointed out to me, I was like, oh my God, I had never even thought of that. And I'm not bragging that I had never thought about it, but I just grew up with that word being so something you just say, like, oh, it's so lame.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And, it was kind of a revelation to be like, oh, right, that is very ableist. So, yeah, maybe you're more conscious in the UK about that stuff. I would not be surprised.
Have you been to the UK?
My parents are English, right?
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, yeah. Coventry.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. And like in this particular instance, I think it probably is the right response. I guess I'm just thinking about the implication and what it could mean for the future.
Of her changing it?
No, yeah, of her changing it and like how that impacts on other artists and puts pressure on people to be moderated in their art.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a huge issue. It's interesting to hear that perspective because I loved that, she didn't get defensive. I loved that she was like, oh, whoops, I didn't even realize, I'm so sorry, which I thought was a great way to handle it, instead of being like, well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
But yes, I agree that the way we moderate our artists and take them, I mean, I'm in yes. I mean, I have lived through my own versions of this and it's very painful and it feels very, sometimes very strangulating and anti-art. And anti-art being part of a culture. I mean, it's like, there's a word that I used in some of my past work that is now thought of as a slur. And back in the day, it wasn't. And so do we, retroactively kind of punish people for using a word that in their culture and their, do we 20 years later say, well, you should have never done that? It's like, no, we have to understand that language has evolved. Our consciousness of language has evolved. Everything's always changing. And we can't be harder on our artists than we are on
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone, trying to expect people to be perfect. And
There's something as well about the intention behind its use. And obviously, that's much harder to determine. And like from different vantage points, it's going to look slightly different. But if someone says something in an offhand way or in an intentionally provocative way, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have that view, right? It's kind of
right.
the whole purpose of art is
I
challenging.
mean, you're talking a bitch.
Oh,
Yes,
that was a
exactly.
question I had as well. Like, how often do you worry about people never being able to find you on the internet?
That has been, let me tell you, had the internet been around when we started, that has been so complicated. And honestly, it's gotten worse in the last few years. Like the censorship of, quote unquote, obscene language. Um, it feels like it's ramping up.
And so then just going back to the 90s, when you came up with the name Bitch, although, is that your given name? Just double checking.
No.
Okay. So when you came up with that
Can
stage
you imagine?
you did say your parents were English, yeah. So when you came up with that name, was it a problem at the time? Did people find that difficult?
It didn't seem like it. I mean, we were very obviously pushing boundaries, and I think that's why we had very quick
Yeah.
success. I feel like in a way it was an advantage at that time. And we were so clearly coming from this very, rebellious,
DIY.
very active and
Yeah.
alive, queer scene that it felt like it was an advantage and memorable and, the whole thing. It wasn't until a lot later that it started becoming an issue. Like, I remember doing a theater piece in Austin, and the postal service, they had my picture right on the front because I was one of their featured artists or whatever. And it says, bitch, blah, blah, blah. And the postal service refused to deliver them.
Oh, interesting.
Crazy stuff.
And has anyone ever had a problem with it from a feminist perspective?
I mean, not that I've been made aware of.
Yeah.
I know that, some of my elders were very much taken aback when they would hear about me. And then when they would see my work or come to a show, etc., it would make sense and they would get it, that it's a clear feminist thing. It's not just me being disempowered, like,
Yeah, yeah.
They understood that it's coming from an empowered place. And I know a lot of my elders at first, it would put up a wall. And now these days I was just like, yeah, well, bitch rhymes with witch. What can I do? I do a whole piece on this in my show about naming myself that, why I name myself that. To me it seems so obvious. It's like, this reclaiming of a word that's used to insult powerful women who take up space. And in recent years, I think we're, all living in the same world here, feeling like, our as more and more happens on the internet and more of our life goes that way, it's like we are more policed.
Yeah. And we are being policed by each other, which is the real kicker.
Oh,
So let's not leave it on that note because I think maybe that's a bit too dour. Let's
I like that idea.
let's circle back.
Okay, let's circle back.
Let's circle. See, you can tell I've been practicing my interviewing. So that plucky young bitch in the 90s that had just moved to New York and was attacking the queer scene. What do you think she could teach you now?
Aw, kind of makes me sad to think about. Because the first thing I thought about was there's this, when I look at her, I see this wide open heart, open optimist that threw myself into a beautiful, queer handmade scene and felt very supported and loved and lifted up and pushed on by that. And so my first instinct was to say, she can teach me that that's still there. That love and like openness and this welcoming, And I do, with this Bitchcraft release, like, I have to say these tours have been very inspiring and has given me another glimpse of, ah, okay, this is open and loving and reciprocal giving. And then there's a side of me that's like, does that exist anymore? Because when we talk about this, the way we do police each other and the queer community, like I've watched over the years, my God, we eat each other alive, or we can, or we seem to want to. And that has broken my heart a little bit to witness. So, yeah, when you first say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that feeling of like, it's all still there. You can approach the world in that way and it's still there for you, which I do feel like I've been experiencing since this Bitchcraft release. But I had retreated for a while because of that kind of, why isn't our tendency to support each other and lift each other up? Is this capitalism? Is this, so anyway, that's what I think she can teach me, is that it is still there. And even if all of us sit back on the internet and can critique each other, etc., I do believe at the bottom of it, we are a loving, supportive community that wants our artists to thrive.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I think that I have always struggled to open myself up and be like vulnerable. That's probably not the right word, but like to be like, here I am and this is what I have to offer, because my assumption is always that everyone's going to be like, yeah, no thanks. And I guess I'm learning that that's not always the case, but also if that is the case, so what?
Right. But the so what is that maybe next time you won't be like, yes, here I am sharing myself all vulnerable. It does shut us down sometimes,
Yeah.
But then I think hopefully, right, we find the open doors and we find the people who are lifting us up and like that vulnerable in us. And, that's who we stick with.
And we lift them up as well in the process.
Right.
We're going deep now.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about myself in relation to the rest of the world and how inconsequential I am, but also how important I am. Oh, this sounds so wanky, sorry.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds so new agey. Like what I say and do doesn't matter at all, but it matters so much. And I have to get the balance right between those two things.
It's so wild. Yeah. It's a paradox. Yeah, it means nothing and yet it means everything. But also, what else do we have besides our actions and what we make?
Well, there's what's on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, that too. Thanks for bringing back the priorities.
And so my final question for you, we've talked about what you've learned from your younger self. What did you learn from having access to that scene in the 90s?
Ooh. As a lover of masculine of center people, I learned a lot about gender nonconformity. And also, like, maybe there was, some movie being made at the time of that scene, the Club Casanova stuff, maybe, but it didn't matter. It was like that we all gathered there. It wasn't some big club. It was like, maybe 100 people every time or whatever. But the fact that we all gathered there and had this kind of ritual of playing with gender, just being with each other in queer space, like, it matters. It doesn't have to become the next big TV show or whatever. Like, it still mattered. And, I struggle a lot in my life with the invisibility factor of being a woman, of being, feeling like there's not a lot of women being represented at pride festivals. You look at the lineups and you're like, oh my God, where are we?
Oh, there's always an acoustic stage, though.
Oh, God, kill me.
Do you have any memories of Club Casanova or clubbing from your own queer scene that you want to share? You do? Well, if you do, then I want to hear all about it. Go to lostspacesPodcast.com and find the section Share a Lost Space and tell me all about what it is you got up to. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where my handle is Lost Spaces Pod. Find out more about Bitch by following her on Instagram or Twitter, where her handle is Bitch Music, or on Facebook, where it's a little bit more complicated and it's b.tch music. So that's bitch, but without the I and a dot instead. Cool, got it? Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. And honestly, you do need to check out her new album, Bitchcraft, which I have been hammering and I absolutely love. And if you've only got time to listen to one song, make sure it's easy target, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you took the time to subscribe, leave a review on your podcast platform of choice, or just tell someone who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.